Hello, Dublin. My name is Anna Spies, and today I'll be showing you how to incorporate a Stripe checkout into any UI, and I do mean any. But first, a little bit about me. Right now, I'm a developer advocate at Stripe, but before that, I was a front-end engineer at AWS, where I built a product apparently nobody used. So I do tend to nerd out about UIs in general and React specifically. On my best days, I can center a div. That QR code is for my LinkedIn, so feel free to get in touch if you have questions. Oh, and I snowboard a lot when I'm not in front of a computer or in front of you lovely people. Okay, we're going to start with a survey. How many of you have either designed a UI or worked with a team of designers or a designer on a website or an app? Okay, good, most of you. Then you know that designers can be a tad touchy sometimes about their designs, as they should be. They spend a lot of time on getting UX right. And you may also know that there's nothing worse than having a beautiful, handcrafted design, carefully implemented in code, only to have it be ruined by an ugly form that doesn't fit the style at all. So today we'll be talking about how to fit a checkout form seamlessly into your existing design. And we're going to start with why a checkout flow should match your design. Then we'll do a deep dive into Stripe's embedded payment options. And finally, we'll compare their implementations to help you decide which option is best for your situation. So let's get started. Does anyone remember Web 2.0? It was that trend in the early 2000s where every website looked the same because they used the same generic Bootstrap theme and practically the exact same checkout form. Luckily, we no longer live in that era. And especially with AI these days, every website can be infinitely customized and even personalized to individual customers. But that means that if you want a truly seamless experience for your potential customers, your checkout needs to match the rest of your design. And this isn't just a style thing. If your website is clean and modern, but your checkout looks like an intern wrote it in 2002, potential customers might not trust it enough to complete their purchase. So here's our challenge. We're going to make a checkout that seamlessly matches our award-winning, carefully designed stripe.dev website. But first, we're going to ruin it. And with that, it's time for my first demo. So this is stripe.dev as it normally looks. If you're not familiar, this is the developer-focused website that my team runs. We have a lot of great content for anybody building with Stripe, wanting to level up their integrations. We have blogs, videos, events like this one, places to get help, and some really cool art. So this was already a pretty unique website as it was, but I wanted a real challenge. So I decided to take our website back in time to 1999. So this is the site now in all of its GeoCities glory. Can you imagine integrating a checkout into that mess? Well, we're about to. But first, let's start with the options Stripe offers for embedded checkouts. So Stripe has 3 ways to integrate a checkout flow into a website. There's payment links, embedded checkout, and payment elements. We're going to dive deeper into all 3 in a moment, but here's a high-level overview, and the main thing to note is the amount of coding effort versus the customization options. The general takeaway is the more customization your checkout flow needs, the higher the integration and maintenance effort on your side. So let's dive into the options. We'll start with our low-code solution, which is payment links. And payment links are just what they sound like. They're a link that takes your customer to a Stripe-hosted site where their payment can be processed. And links can be used in all kinds of situations, not just a website. They can be used in text message campaigns or for purchases on social media, for example. And Stripe has two options for payment links. One is just literally a link, but the other one is a payment link in the form of a button or a card with a little preview of the item for sale and some payment methods on there, and that's meant to be embedded in your site. So let's take a look at how to set these up in the Stripe dashboard. So we're here in the Stripe dashboard. This is on our demo account, and you can see this is a little preview of what your payment link would look like. You can do mobile or desktop. And first thing we're going to do is mess with the colors because this looks way too clean for the 90s. So I'm going to go to our lovely site, see if I can pull some of the louder colors out. Okay, and let's see, not quite, better. Okay, getting better. And then we want to change the font, of course. And the font I really want is Times New Roman, but unfortunately it's not available, so I'll have to go with a default serif option. And we'll take off rounded corners because those didn't exist in 1999. So now let's go back to our site, and this is something everybody can do now. So if you set our 90s theme, you get this new hidden menu item called Vibes. And what clicking that does is take you to our lovely Dev Vibes store. This is where all three of the demos I'll be showing you live. So let's look at the first one. This is the payment link. So here it is just as a link. But here it is as the embedded button. And both of these go to the same place. So I'm going to click that. And okay, so that's the form we set up. Looks pretty bad as we wanted, so cool. And then this is what your customer would go through, and what I'm going to do is use one of Stripe's testing cards. So these are numbers anybody can use in a sandboxed account just to test different flows. So we're going to see what a successful payment looks like. Okay, cool. So that's that. So you may have noticed that that whole checkout flow took place within our Stripe hosted site. But that's not ideal if you want your customer to spend more time and ideally more money on your website. So let's look at an option that takes place entirely on your site. So embedded checkout takes the form from the previous demo and lets you embed it directly into your website or your app. Coding-wise, it's a bit more effort than the payment link, as you have to update your front-end code to embed the form, and you actually need some back-end code that makes the API call to Stripe. But because the form is hosted on your website, you get a bit more flexibility in modifying its styling through CSS overrides. So let's take a look at Stripe's embedded checkout demo. And first, I'll actually show you Stripe's sandbox for playing around with the embedded checkout. So this is actually not in our dashboard like the previous demo. This is just open for anybody to use. Don't need a Stripe account, so you can just play around. And what you can do is look at different pricing models, like what a subscription would look like, for example, see what kind of information you want to gather from your customers. But most important for us is we can look at the styling options, and there's a few more here. than previously. So we even have themes we can set. We can override these colors. We can change fonts, but still no Times New Roman. So let's see what it looks like in our form then. So we'll go to our second demo here. And okay, there's our form in here. But because we are within our site now, we've got a little bit more control. So of course, normally I would do this in the code base, but here I'm gonna do it live, and we're gonna do a CSS override. Right here, let's see. That's the container I want. So gonna throw out Stripes font and say font family Times New Roman. Cool, much better. Okay, and now let's simulate a failed payment. So I'm gonna use one of Stripe's testing cards again, this for declined payment, and see what that looks like. Okay, cool. So here, error messaging, like a declined payment, is handled by Stripe in the form, and your customer sees a message that their payment didn't go through and can then add another card. Okay, so we're getting closer to making our checkout flow match our UI, but it's not quite there yet. For one, it could get a lot uglier. So let's see how. The most versatile option Stripe has for customizing your checkout flow is called payment elements. And this just consists of different elements you can add directly into your code base. One thing to note is there are two ways to add payment elements to your website. The first is by using the Checkout Sessions API, which is the simpler and in most cases the recommended method. But there's also the Payment Intents API, which does allow for additional customization, such as adding payment methods that Stripe might not support yet, or adding server-side validation you might need for compliance, for example. But because of the styling is the same regardless of which API we use, we're going to stick with the simpler Checkout Sessions API for our demo. So just like with the embedded checkout, Stripe has this built-in demo that we can play around with. So I'm going to go there. And here, so as before, you can add different elements, see what they look like in the UI, and most importantly for us, play with the appearance, and there's even a few more options here. But honestly, this is the wrong place to do that, because the true power of using payment elements is that you can do all of your styling in your code base rather than in the Stripe dashboard. So given unlimited power within our code, let's just see what we were able to do in our checkout. Okay, there we go. Full on 1995. So as you can see, this now fits fully within our site's aesthetic, for better or worse. Right down to the correct font now. There's no Stripe branding, so the checkout just feels like part of the website. And this applies to different elements. So we can show or hide different elements, and they're all gonna match our styling if we show them. But one of the best parts of using payment elements is you can enable Stripe developer tools. And it's this little overlay here where you have the elements inspector, which is a super useful way to test different locales or spoof different payment scenarios for where your customers might be coming from or paying and so on. Super powerful, could do a whole talk on just the elements inspector, but I won't today. My favorite part is this magic fill, because then I don't have to type stuff. So let's do the declined card again from previously. I'm just gonna add my email. And going to select a county here because that's required. And let's see what this looks like now. Well, so as you can see, not only do we control our form's look and feel, we have full control now over the success and error handling. So if something goes wrong for our customer, we can give them a nice button to try again. So let's see what this looks like when it succeeds. So I'll use the magic fill again, this time with a successful card. Add my email. Close that. Good County. And let's see. Booyah. So now that feels like our 90s website end to end. Okay, so that was the last demo. And I hope now you have a better sense of Stripe's embedded checkout options, but we still haven't answered the question of which option is right for your UI. And well, that depends. Are you a solo founder frantically vibe coding your MVP? Then payment links is the quickest way to get started and start collecting payments. Or do you have a team of developers maintaining your enterprise code base with super specialized needs like additional payment methods or a multi-step checkout flow? Well, then payment elements is where you should start. And then let's not forget maintenance, because Stripe is constantly rolling out new features and product updates. And that means using a Stripe hosted option, you'll get your checkout flow will always be current and compliant because regulations are also changing often. If you're using one of the options that uses the Stripe SDK, then that's updated often as well, but then it's up to you to make sure your code base is current. So are you deploying every day, every week, or did you set up your checkout once a year ago and kind of forgot it? That should also go into your decision making. But to really put this in perspective, let's look at some example code. And this code will be in TypeScript, which is not the best language. Sorry, I couldn't. I tried. But this is all you need for a payment link and an embedded button. It's so easy, a product manager could do it. So top part, just a link. Bottom part is you're pulling in the JavaScript from Stripe, and you're initiating the buy button element. And the thing to note here is you're using your public key because this is client side. And for this, all you need is front-end code, no back-end code. And then we have the embedded checkout. This is the client-side code, which uses the Stripe-provided embedded provider and the embedded checkout form. And here we are calling our API, our backend endpoint. We're getting a Stripe promise. We're passing that to the provider, which wraps the checkout element. And the thing to note is that the embedded checkout component does not take class name as a prop, so you can't pass it CSS directly. So what we did in that earlier example is we targeted the div above it, and we're able to apply CSS through that. And this may or may not matter, because if the existing styles for the embedded checkout work well enough with your site, then it's probably a better option given its much lower maintenance burden. And then this is the server-side code, which makes a post request to the Stripe API. It does send over the price ID, which is how Stripe knows which product your customer is buying. And finally, this is the payment elements client-side code. The most important part of this is that appearance object in the first code block. So that's where the magic happens. That's where you're able to set all of the options. So you have fonts, you have colors, you can get into really minute details like the input padding or border colors and so on. So it's super powerful. You can really customize practically whatever you want there. Rest of the code is similar to the other implementation we call our backend. We get our promise back. and we pass the Stripe promise as well as the appearance object to the checkout provider that then wraps our elements. And then this is the server-side code, also similar to the checkout implementation, but it could get a lot more complex if we were using the payment intents API. So I hope you have an idea of the amount of engineering effort involved in each integration. But there's one more option I didn't bring up. So you can use all three solutions, just not all at once. You can start by taking the branding and colors of your UI, applying them to the checkout styling in the Stripe demo, like we did in the first demo, in the Stripe dashboard. And you're 90% of the way there to having a payment link, and about halfway there to having an embedded checkout. You can use what you've learned here to decide which one of those you need for now. And then as your business grows or your design becomes more complex or you hire more engineers, you can consider migrating to payment elements, but don't over-engineer until you have to. Okay, if you want to try any of the demos I showed you yourself, here are the links. Note that you'll have to set the theme first if you want to experience the Vibes checkout in all of its 90s glory.